mode.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Let's Grow webinar titled Is Sheep Milk Production in Your Future? My name is Jay Parsons. It's my pleasure to be the host and moderator for this evening's webinar. In a moment, I'll introduce our speaker, Dr. Dave Thomas from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'd like to start by thanking the Let's Grow Committee of the American Sheep Industry Association for sponsoring these educational webinars. They are very supportive of all of education throughout the United States to help the American sheep industry be successful and to help you be successful as a producer in the sheep business. I encourage you to visit the ASI website, which can be accessed by typing in the URL www.sheepusa.org. They have a lot of educational materials on there, including the Let's Grow program materials, which you can access by clicking under the programs item up on the menu. You can also access that website directly by typing in the URL www.growourflock.org. So I'd like to remind everybody that we will be recording this webinar, and all registrants will receive a follow-up email with a direct link to the webinar recording and also links to access the webinar slides, which will also be posted. These materials are also available from the Let's Grow website. If you click the Resources tab that they have there on their main menu, there'll be a link to the educational webinars, and all this recording and all of our past recordings are all up there for you to access and view at your leisure. We're slated to go about 45 minutes with the actual presentation, followed up by about a half hour of questions. You can feel free to submit your questions at any time during the talk by typing into the question box in the lower right-hand side of your menu bar there in your command window. And I'll be monitoring those throughout the webinar, and then I will moderate them to our speaker during the Q&A session. If you have a microphone connected, you'll also be able to raise your hand and speak directly with our speaker if you choose to do so during the Q&A session. For the most part, I'm going to let Dr. Thomas deliver his presentation uninterrupted, unless there's a reason to interrupt him, obviously. And then we'll handle all the Q&As at the same time at the end of the time span. So with that, it's my pleasure to go ahead and introduce Dr. Dave Thomas, freshly retired, I guess is the right word, professor of sheep management and genetics with the Department of Animal Sciences there at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's a great pleasure to have him on to talk about this topic of sheep milk production, because I've heard from just about everybody I've spoken with that he's the expert on it. So Dr. Thomas, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jay. It's a pleasure to be talking to people out there that are evidently interested in this whole new area of producing milk from sheep. Before I get started tonight, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm suffering from a bit of cold, so I'll try not to sniffle or cough too much. But if I have to leave for a minute to get a drink of water, I'll do that. But it's a pleasure to be with you to talk about sheep milk production. I'm going to start out with a bit of world background. You can see on this slide the top countries in the production of sheep milk cheese. And of course, the main use of sheep milk in the world is for the production of cheese. And you can see there, most of those countries are in the Mediterranean basin. Greece, of course, is there, Italy, Spain, France, Turkey, Portugal. Exceptions are China, which has more sheep than any other country in the world. They're also listed as producing more sheep milk cheese. I myself don't quite believe that statistic, but it's there in the FAO statistics. So these are the major countries listed for sheep milk cheese production. But when you look at the countries that really make an industry out of sheep milk production and sheep milk cheese production, these are the countries that export large amounts of sheep milk cheese. Italy, far and away the biggest country in the world as far as production of sheep milk cheese for export, followed way behind by France, then Bulgaria, and way behind them Greece, Spain, and Romania. And so when you look at this map of the Mediterranean basin, there are large commercial sheep milk industries in Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, primarily on the island of Sardinia, over here to Greece, then up along the Black Sea with Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and then we've got Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Iran, and well, Iran, I guess, is the other one that I don't have on the map. But commercial sheep milk production has been going on in this Mediterranean basin area for centuries. Here's just a quick shot of a bunch of manchega ewes in southern Spain being milked in a milking parlor. This I took a few years ago on a trip to Spain to take a look at their dairy sheep industry. And you see modern milking parlors like this all through these southern European countries. And many of you may recognize the names of some of these cheeses, but may not realize that they are made from sheep's milk. One of the most famous is the blue vein cheese called Roquefort, made in the Roquefort area of southern France. It's 100% sheep milk cheese made from the milk from Lacogne sheep that are raised in that particular area. So if you've ever had true Roquefort cheese, you've eaten 100% sheep milk cheese. Another one is Pecorino Romano from Italy, primarily from the island of Sardinia, and it's made from the milk from the Sarda sheep found in Sardinia. Excuse me. We import more of this sheep milk cheese than any other. It's a hard grating cheese like Parmesan, and you may oftentimes be eating Pecorino Romano on your pizza when you think that it's Parmesan. So it's imported in very, very large quantities into the U.S. And then Manchego cheese, any decent cheese case, even in a regular grocery store, will often have Manchego cheese in the cheese case, and it's denoted by this waxy coating that has a basket weave appearance to it. And it's 100% sheep milk cheese made in Spain from milk produced from the Manchega sheep. So that's just a little background on world sheep milk production. Where does the U.S. come into this? Well, this graph shows in the orange line the imports of sheep milk cheese into the United States from 1985 up until 2011, which are the most recent figures that we have from FAO. And you can see here that in recent years, 53 to 73 million pounds, 24 to 33 million kilograms of sheep milk cheese is imported into the U.S. Now, that's not a lot of cheese relative to the total amount of cheese that we consume in this country, but when you take a look at the total world exports of sheep milk cheese from all of these countries that have a big industry, about 50% of all the sheep milk cheese exported by all of these countries comes to the U.S. We're far and away the greatest market for sheep milk cheese in the world. One interesting thing here, you'll note that in 2008 there was a tremendous fall off that continued into 2010 in imports of sheep milk cheese. There's some indication that it's rebounded in 2011, and I would hope that it's tended to increase as we come out here to 2016. And of course, the reason for that is what happened in 2008 was the Great Depression. And sheep milk cheese, for the most part, is somewhat of a luxury food, and people didn't eat as much during the Great Depression years. As economies rebounded, then they're coming back and eating more. So this is somewhat of a luxury foodstuff. Well, the North American dairy sheep industry is very new. There's no real history of dairy sheep production in North America. You all know that we started out as a wool-producing country, and we've gravitated towards meat production as the primary product from sheep. And so there's no real history of dairy sheep production in North America. And it's a very new industry. And the first commercial dairy sheep farms were established in the mid to late 1980s. And at that time, we had no specialized dairy breeds of sheep in the United States, and so the production was very low because it was established with the breeds that we had here. It'd be like establishing a dairy cow industry by milking Herefords and Angus. We didn't have the Holsteins of the dairy sheep world here at that time. Some of the early pioneers in dairy sheep production, Dr. Bill Boylan at the University of Minnesota, he started the very first dairy sheep research program in 1984, again with local breeds, Suffolk, Dorsets, Rambouillets, and a number of other domestic breeds. Joan Snyder was the first licensed dairy sheep, had the first licensed dairy sheep farm in the U.S. in New York, Hollow Road Farm, started in 1985. That was eventually sold to Old Chatham Sheep Herding Company, and that has now been sold to another person, Dr. Dave Galton, near Cornell, New York. And then Roger and Lucy Steinkamp started the North American Dairy Sheep Association in Hinckley, Minnesota in 1987, and they didn't produce sheep milk, but Lucy was a processor of sheep's milk. So those are just some of the very early pioneers in this industry. This is a very old map. It was put together in 2010 by the Dairy Sheep Association of North America, and it gives at that time an estimate of the number of farms in Mexico, Canadian provinces, and the states of the U.S., number of farms that were milking sheep. And at that time, they estimated that there were about 167 farms in North America that were milking sheep. There are no USDA statistics maintained on milking sheep. The Dairy Sheep Association of North America is planning on redoing this census to get more up-to-date figures. My guess is that we might have anywhere from 250 to 275 farms now. Maybe there might be another 100 farms in North America. You can see back in 2010 where the concentrations were. Here's Quebec in Canada, Ontario, and there is a big concentration of sheep dairies in southern Ontario and southern Quebec. Wisconsin had the most of any single state. That may not be the case anymore. We have about 19 licensed sheep dairies in Wisconsin, and then New York, Vermont, now New Hampshire. So New England, New York and New England is the other place. And then we have sheep dairies spread throughout the rest of the U.S. I'm sure that there may be somebody on the program tonight that's in one of these states where we don't indicate any sheep dairies, or a state where there's only one. They may know that there's now 5 or 6. So as I said, this is out of date, and hopefully we can get some more recent figures here fairly soon. Okay, a little bit about cows, goats, and sheep. People immediately, when I go to social engagement with non-ag people and they say, what do you do? I say, well, I'm an animal scientist and I work with dairy sheep. Immediately they say, oh, I know somebody that milks goats, and dairy sheep doesn't jive with them. It's too new. And they think that dairy sheep are the same as dairy goats. Well, here you can see that their milk composition is a lot different. Actually, cow's milk and goat's milk is fairly similar in composition. Has about the same percent protein. It has about the same percent fat. It has about the same percent total solids. And it's ewe's milk, sheep's milk, that's higher in protein than either goat or cow milk. It's higher in fat, and it's higher in total solids. So whereas it takes 9 pounds of goat's milk or cow's milk to make a pound of cheese, it takes about 5 pounds of sheep's milk to make a pound of cheese. So sheep's milk has almost twice the yield of cheese compared with either cow or goat. That's one of the reasons that cheese processors like sheep's milk, and why it's worth more on a per pound basis than either cow or goat milk. So if we assume that maybe, and we might be more than this now, that rather than 100 farms, maybe there's 125 farms milking sheep in the U.S. If they're averaging 150 ewes per farm, and if they produce 500 pounds of milk in a lactation, we might be producing something under 10 million pounds of sheep milk in the U.S. And if we can get a pound of cheese out of every 5 pounds of sheep's milk, then we're producing about 2 million pounds of sheep milk cheese in the U.S. each year. But remember, we're importing, depending upon the year, 53 to 73 million pounds, and we're only producing maybe 2 million pounds. So there's 28 to 38 times as much sheep milk cheese imported as what is produced here. This would seem to indicate a tremendous opportunity for expansion of domestic production. However, nothing is as simple as it might seem, or maybe it isn't quite as good as it might seem. One of the real, and I don't think I've got a slide on this, but one of the real issues, challenges in the dairy sheep industry at this time is the small number of producers and the small amount of milk produced. And so marketing of sheep milk when you're an isolated sheep milk producer is a real issue. So anybody thinking about milking sheep, we can tell people how to milk sheep, and we'll go through some of that tonight. But one of the things that everyone must do is make sure that they've got a stable market for that sheep milk. They're either going to process it themselves, or you're going to find a local processor to buy that sheep's milk before you enter into the business. Okay, I'm going to move along here. Dairy sheep breeds. We have 2 breeds in the U.S. The East Friesian was first imported in 1993 from Canada, and they're a native of Germany, and the Lacogne that was first native of France, and frozen semen was first imported in 1998. Since then, there have been some additional, of course, many additional imports, and you'll find fairly sizable flocks of crossbred East Frisian, crossbred Lacones available in the U.S. at the current time. As I said, most of them are crossbreds because semen was imported primarily, and that was put on local ewes, and so we have either high-grade East Frisians, high-grade Lacones, or crosses between the two. There is another dairy breed that hasn't made its way into the U.S. yet, but is found in Canada. This is the British milk sheep. It was developed in the U.K. for to have a breed of ewe that was prolific and also produce a lot of milk to raise all of those lambs. But there's some East Frisian breeding in that breed, the British milk sheep, and the ones that are in Canada have been heavily selected for milk production and do quite well. When you're talking about going into dairy sheep production, you need to have an artificial lamb rearing system in order to capture some of this early lactation milk rather than let the lambs have it. And so you need to have an excellent artificial lamb rearing system. Work that we've done here at the University of Wisconsin year in and year out shows that we raise from birth to 30 days of age lambs on milk replacer, and it takes about 18 pounds of milk replacer powder per lamb weaned. And those lambs then are weaned onto complete dry diets at about 30 days of age. And we have some producers in Wisconsin that are actually taking these lambs off milk replacer at 17 to 20 days of age with good success. But that means that they've got plenty of access to milk replacer, and they've got a high protein, high concentrate creep available to them while they're on that milk replacer, so they can transition to a dry diet very easily. We use automatic machines for mixing the milk replacer, and it's on demand then for the lambs. It's always fresh. I think one of the greatest reasons for poor artificial lamb rearing systems with some of our producers is failure to keep this equipment clean. This equipment needs to be cleaned with hot soap, taken apart, cleaned with hot soapy water on a daily basis in order to have lambs that thrive and that do well. In the early years of our work here, we compared lambs that were raised with their mother for 30 days, lambs that were raised on milk replacer for the first 30 days, and our lamb mortality was no different between the two systems. Lamb weights at the end of the 30 days were no different between lambs raised on milk replacer compared with lambs raised by their mother. So it is possible to have very successful artificial lamb rearing systems. This graph, our dairy sheep research program was at the Spooner Ag Research Station, which is in northwest Wisconsin. And this shows in this top line here the average milk production per adult ewe, a ewe 2 years of age and older, from 1997. We started with ewe lambs in 1996, so our first 2-year-olds milked in 1997. Up through 2010 is all I've got figures here, but it continued to climb out here. And you can see we went from 250 pounds of milk in 1997 to over 850 pounds of milk in 2010. Lots of reasons for that. One of the main reasons is we went to milking these ewes from day one rather than allowing the ewes to nurse their lambs for 30 days before we started to milk. The other big thing is all along here we're increasing the percentage of dairy breeding. We start out here with quarter blood East Frisian ewes, and we continue to upgrade them to higher percentage East Frisian and Lacone, so we're increasing our dairy percentage. Plus we learn how to feed these animals, we learn how to manage them better over time. But it just shows you what changes have come about in this industry due to new technology and due to an increase in the proportion of dairy breeding in these ewes. The purple line here is our ewe lamb production. Ewes lambing at 1 year of age, and in 2010 we were up to about 525 pounds of milk per ewe lamb. The other lines are the days in milk, and the older ewes now are milking for about 7 months. We get about a 210 lactation period out of these ewes. What about milking systems? There's all sorts of milking systems. You still see out in some of the smaller operations elevated platform with somewhat homemade stanchion, milking out of an old Surge cow milker. And then we have modern parlors. This is called this is a double 12. This happens to be the early years of our parlor at the Spooner Ag Research Station, and we're with a pit. Here is the old Chatham sheep milking parlor in Old Chatham, New York. This is a double 24. Got the pit in the middle here. The ewes, 24 ewes come in, and they can take any stanchion they want. Once they're in a stanchion, they're locked in, and once all the ewes are in a stanchion, this whole thing is on wheels, and it moves back and pushes the ewes' butts up against the pit. So they milk the ewes, and this is what we call a low-line parlor. The milk and vacuum line is low in the pit. I'll go back. This parlor at the Spooner is a high line parlor. The vacuum and milk lines are above the pit. The advantage of this is that you can use the same milking unit on both sides, so you can swing from one side to the other. With the low line, you can't bring a milking unit here over on this side because you've got milk lines then that get in the way of the labor in the pit. So the milking unit can only be used on the side of the parlor that it's on, which requires more milking units in a low line pit. The advantage of a low line is it takes a little less vacuum. It doesn't to pull the milk down rather than to push it up, which is perhaps a little easier on the udders and a little more gentle on the milk. Here is another parlor in Wisconsin. This is a double 24, but it's a rapid exit. So they have 24 stalls on either side of the pit. The ewes, as they come in, have to take the last stanchion, and then they fill as they come in, and these little paddles go across. But the great thing about this is at the end of milking, the front stanchion all comes up, and the sheep exit through the front. So it's a rapid exit, rapid fill, and so it has greater throughput per hour than the systems that you've seen before. And then I know of only one mechanical rotary parlor in the U.S. There may be more. I know there are several in southern Ontario. And of course they have the advantages of fast throughput and the people don't have to do much walking within the parlor. And we even have on one of our little Amish farms here, this is a hand milking rotary parlor, kind of built on the like a merry-go-round. The ewes come through this door back here and they're stanchioned in here, and as they slowly move around here, the Amish milk these ewes by hand. So a very simple homemade parlor. So these milking systems, the mechanical ones, of course, are available through the various manufacturers of dairy cattle equipment, Westphalia, GEA, I lost my train of thought there, but a number of these cow companies also can source dairy sheep parlors. There's some difference in the milking machine settings for sheep compared with cows. Some of the things are very similar. The vacuum level, however you define the vacuum level in kilopascals, it's about 36, which is equivalent to 11 inches of mercury, or about 5.2 pounds per square inch. The vacuum at the end of the teat is the same as recommended for cows. The ratio of vacuum and rest is 50-50. Half the time the teat is resting, half the time it's got a vacuum on it. But the big differences are the pulsation rates, and this is a huge difference. Cow milking machines are set at about 50 pulsations per minute, and sheep is anywhere from 120 up to 180, and most operations are at the high end of that at about 180 pulsations per minute. And just imagine that, that's really moving. And so these sheep tend to milk better when they've got a very high pulsation rate. So there is a difference between milking machines for sheep and milking machines for cows. Milk quality standards are the same for cow milk as it is for sheep's milk. For interstate shipment of milk, grade A milk, less than 100,000 bacteria per mil, less than 750,000 somatic cells. Of course, this is an indication, somatic cells are an indication of an unhealthy udder, an infected udder, mastitis. And so you can't ship milk if it's over 750,000 somatic cells. And grade B, milk just for processing, can't be shipped across state lines. Excuse me. Same somatic cell count requirements. They do allow a greater bacterial count in grade B milk, since it will be processed. But no difference in quality standards between cow milk and sheep's milk for interstate shipment of milk. Some of you may know that goat's milk now, I think it's at least a million somatic cell counts, and it may be 1.5 million that they allow in goat's milk, because goats, just healthy goat udders, naturally slough more cells into their milk. And so relatively recently the goat industry has got their somatic cell count levels regulated up. But sheep are the same as cows. The high solids content of sheep milk allows sheep milk to be frozen, and then when it's thawed, it still makes a reasonable quality cheese. And this fact was indispensable to get this industry started, because we had many small producers. They weren't producing enough milk for fluid delivery or pickup to a processing plant on a regular basis, and so the milk was frozen. And then when there was a large quantity of frozen milk, it was shipped then to the processing plant where it was thawed and processed. However, early on, a lot of that milk was frozen in home chest-type freezers, and those freezers don't get cold enough and they don't freeze the milk fast enough, and there's some loss of quality during the freezing process. So if you're going to freeze sheep milk, you need to have a large commercial-type freezer that can get the milk down to 25 to 27 degrees below 0 Celsius, minus 13 to minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit. And research here in our food science department has shown that milk frozen like this for up to a year still produces cheese of acceptable quality. This happens to be our freezer at the Spooner station. When the milk comes in, it's put in, these are about 40-pound plastic bags of milk. They're put on racks so that air can circulate around it so they can freeze very fast. And then they're stacked, currently we stack them on pallets, but at this time we stacked them in the back when they're frozen, and then the new milk that comes in is put on the shelves for quick freezing. Of course, as this industry has grown, there has been enough milk available in many parts of the country that we can have fluid pickup of milk. Most states will allow milk to remain cooled in a bulk tank for up to 4 days. This is the case in Wisconsin. So our producers that are having fluid pickup have milk picked up twice a week, either after there's 3 days or 4 days of milk in the tank. What's the price of this milk? Depending where you are, it can vary quite a bit. 80 cents to $1.10 per pound. $1.10 a pound is somewhat of a going price in eastern U.S. 80 cents a pound has kind of been our price here in the Midwest. Unfortunately, I was informed at a meeting on Saturday by one of our producers that one of our main processors in Wisconsin is now paying 65 cents a pound for milk, which makes it very difficult to make ends meet. So this again indicates that you really need to get with if you want to go into dairy sheep production, get with the processor, what are they willing to pay. And I think that a producer needs to be in this 80 to $1.10 range if they can expect to make a reasonable profit in milking sheep. Currently, there is not much selling of milk on components, and let's see, I'm getting a message here that I'm talking a little too loud, so I'll try and tone it down just a little bit. Sorry about that. Sheep milk is still sold primarily on a weight basis, as long as the somatic cell count and the bacterial counts are being maintained. There are some places where the milk is being sold on a formula basis based upon percent fat, percent protein, and the somatic cell count. We do have in North America at least 2 milk marketing cooperatives that work with dairy sheep producers that are just interested in producing milk and selling it to a processor. The one is the Unity Dairy Cooperative in Southern Ontario. The other is the Wisconsin Sheep Dairy Cooperative in Wisconsin. But I will say that there has been a tendency in recent years for people that are producing just milk and not processing themselves to negotiate directly with a processor and sell directly to a particular processor, or make the next step and process their sheep milk on the farm into farmstead cheeses and other sheep milk products. And here we've got some examples of some real success stories. This is Brendan Jensen, who, along with her husband Dean, own Hidden Springs Creamery in Westby, Wisconsin. They were one of our early dairy sheep producers, started milking a couple hundred ewes in a fairly antiquated system. I don't know exactly how many ewes they're up to now, but I know their goal is to get to 700, 800, 1,000 ewes, and I think they're getting close to that. Brenda is also a cheese maker and has a beautiful plant right on her farm where she makes many soft cheeses and some semi-hard cheeses, and she's won all sorts of awards throughout the country for her sheep milk cheeses. Here's Colleen and Michael Histon of New Windsor, Maryland. Michael is a past president of the Dairy Sheep Association of North America. As far as I know, they're the only dairy sheep producer in the state of Maryland, and they also have gone the route of producing milk, and Colleen then is the cheese maker in their on-farm farmstead cheese operation. Bellwether Farms, Cynthia Callahan started many years ago in Petaluma, California, and her son Liam has come in as the cheese maker, and they make some wonderful cheeses. If you ever visit the wineries in the Napa Valley, you'll often see Bellwether Farms sheep milk cheeses in the cheese cases in those various wineries up and down in the Napa and Sonoma valleys. Sid Cook here in Laval, out of Laval, Wisconsin. He actually owns Car Valley Cheese Company, which has at least 4 cheese plants here in Wisconsin, headquartered at Laval. He's probably the main buyer of sheep milk in the state of Wisconsin. And he makes a number of sheep milk cheeses and sheep milk blended cheeses. Sid has won more awards for his cheeses at the American Cheese Society competition than any other cheese maker in the United States, and sheep milk is an important part of his operation. Here we have Tom and Nancy Clark of Old Chatham, New York, who started out raising dairy sheep and established the Old Chatham Sheep Herding Company Creamery. That has now, both the sheep and the creamery have been sold to a gentleman by the name of Dave Galton, and the creamery is still at Old Chatham, but the sheep are near Cornell, New York, and I think the creamery is about to move there also. So there's an operation that was very successful, but it's been bought out now by a larger producer. Some of the things that the industry needs, there is no program in North America for pedigree recording of dairy sheep. There's no registry association for East Frisian or Lacone or just U.S. dairy sheep. East Frisians do have a registry in Canada, and there's no organized milk recording or national genetic improvement program. The National Sheep Improvement Program does not currently include milk traits in their genetic evaluation, which means that there's really no way for producers that are looking for genetically superior stock to find them, because there's no organized method of calculating genetic values on dairy sheep in the U.S. As a result, there are very few dairy sheep producers that are actually doing any milk recording. This is a real problem. The few producers that do milk recording then use that information on within flock selection but this is something that the industry really needs if they're really going to genetically improve the U.S. dairy sheep population over time. Just a couple more slides here. The Dairy Sheep Association of North America is a very important organization. The reason it's important, it's the one place where dairy sheep people can get together and share ideas and knowledge through the Dairy Sheep Symposium that's held once a year. The Dairy Sheep Association of North America was established in 2002. They do publish a quarterly newsletter called the Journal of DASANA, which kind of keeps the membership up to date on what's happening. And the big thing is that they sponsor the annual Dairy Sheep Association of North America Symposium with a printed proceedings. We just held the 22nd Dairy Sheep Association North America Symposium in Cornell, New York this past December, and I think the 23rd will be in Quebec, Canada in 2017. Okay, I think what I've got in the rest of these slides are some actual research results from our work here. And I'm going to go through just two of these slides to make an important point, but then I'll end here and we'll take any questions that people might have. This first one shows the importance of starting out with dairy sheep. These are some of the results from our very early work at our Spoon Rag Research Station when we had non-dairy breed sheep, Dorset crosses, Dorset sired ewes. We compared those with East Frisian crosses, and a lot of these ewes were only a quarter East Frisian. The first rams we brought in were half East Frisians. The first dairy ewes we produced that we milked were quarter East Frisians, and then some were also in this group were 50%. But the thing I want to point out here is that the dairy crosses, being only a quarter or a half East Frisian, produced almost twice as much milk as the non-dairy breeds. You can't start an economical dairy sheep operation without dairy sheep. And then when we look at the differences between the dairy breeds we have in the U.S., East Frisians or Lacone, there's not a lot of difference between the two. This is some of our results for 3-year-old ewes lactating about 190 days early, and this is some of our early data. Like I said, now our ewes are lactating about 210 days. Milk yield here in kilos, and this is about 800 pounds of milk for the East Frisians, a little less for the Lacone, but not much difference in milk yield. The differences are in fat percentage. The Lacones are higher in fat than these Frisians. This doesn't look like a big difference, but it is statistically significant. They're also higher in protein. So the Lacone is sort of the brown Swiss or the Jersey of the dairy sheep industry, putting higher components in. But litter size, we get a lot more lambs, an average of about 2 lambs per ewe out of the East Frisian, 1.8 out of the Lacone. So if you're thinking about Lacone or East Frisian, you can think, well, you're going to get a little more fat, a little more protein out of the Lacone, a little more milk out of the East Frisian, and quite a few more lambs out of the East Frisian. The best bet is to cross East Frisians with Lacones, get the best of both worlds, and also take advantage of hybrid vigor. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop and take any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thomas. That's fantastic. And just a reminder to our listeners, you can type in your questions in the question box in the lower part of your control panel if you like, or if you want to ask your question directly and have a microphone connected to your computer, you can raise your hand and I can unmute your microphone. Since you ended on this, I'm going to resist the temptation to ask my favorite questions first. You'll understand that comment here in a moment, because we had a question come in about these two different breeds here. And besides the milk production, and you pointed out the litter size difference here, what else is there in terms of the differences between these breeds?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The East Frisian has a greater, what is one to say? They're more susceptible to respiratory disease than the Lacone. And this was very evident when we first started with the East Frisian. We had very high mortality rates in our East Frisian lambs once we got out of the half bloods and got into 3/4 and higher. I think over the years we've learned how to manage those lambs by improving our ventilation, making sure that we get a lot of colostrum into them, but they do take a little better management at the lamb level than a non-dairy sheep, and even than the Lacone. They tend to be more susceptible to respiratory disease. So that's another major difference between them. Some people, we have one producer in Ontario, Canada, that has both pure East Frisians and pure Lacones, and he said the East Frisians are much more docile. The Lacones tend to be maybe just a little less docile, maybe take a little longer to settle down in the parlor than the East Frisians do. But the main difference is this difference in prolificacy, with the East Frisians more prolific than the Lacones. Lacones higher fat and protein than the East Frisians, and the East Frisians being more susceptible to respiratory disease.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to ask my two favorite questions, because I'm an ag economist. So when we get economics questions, I got to jump on them. One of them was, can you provide an estimate of the cost of production for a pound of milk? And that came up when you were given the price range. So I assume it's somewhere in that range. But I'm going to go ahead and ask the second question too, because it pertains to that. And that is, what size of flock is needed to be profitable? So if you want to address that in terms of cost of production.
Sure. You know, and I don't have a real good answer to that, because there's so many variables that go into that, and that's one thing that we don't have in this industry yet are good benchmarks that we need to be going after in order to ensure profitability. But size of flock, I think in order for a family to have say a net income from a dairy sheep operation of $25,000 to $30,000 a year, that you'd need to be milking 200 to 250 ewes.
Okay. See, we had a question on the processing side early on when you were discussing that. Are there any custom processors of sheep's milk cheese that process cheese from small farm dairies? Just any experience you have there in terms of getting the milk processed locally off of a small farm?
Yes. Yes. We do have some plants here in Wisconsin that will take your milk and will process it and then turn it back to you, and you do the marketing. As a matter of fact, that's how the Wisconsin Sheep Dairy Cooperative sells right now they're in a bit of a bind, but in the past they've sold milk directly to processors, but then they've also taken a portion of their milk and had it custom made into cheese and then done the marketing. So that has been done here in Wisconsin. I'm not aware of plants in other parts of the country that are doing that, but they may very well be doing that other places also.
Okay, and we had another question just come in on the marketing side. Are there challenges providing year-round milk?
Um, yes. Um, yes, sheep are seasonal breeders. These two breeds that we have, East Frisian and Lacone, tend to be fairly seasonal breeders. And some of our processors would like milk year-round, and of course it would be more efficient for the farm if they were using their milking facilities throughout the year rather than just for 7 or 8 months out of the year. So that is a problem. Some of our producers are using seeders to synchronize estrus out of season, and are milking year-round. I mean, they're producing milk throughout the year. But in order to do that, you've got to use hormonal manipulation and/or light control of the flock.
Okay, and a question came in when you had you were putting up the production from the Spooner data,
Yes.
and you mentioned switching from zero, basically going down to where you weaned on day 0.
Right.
What year did that occur? A question came in during that time.
Let me go here to.
If you want to flip back to that slide or not with your production.
I want to go to. I'm going to go to one of my other
Okay.
slides here. Okay. The very first study that we did was in 1998, and that's when we compared this day 30 system, and this is the European system, so that's what we started out on, and most of the other producers. And that's where the ewes raise their lambs for 30 days, and then you wean the lambs and you start milking the ewes. And we compared it with the system that we're using now. And I'll show you the results here in a minute. But we did that trial in 1998, and I would say, I'm not remembering exactly, but by the year 2000 or 2001, we had virtually abandoned any of the systems except the day 1 system. So I'd say about 2000, we went to this day 1 system.
Okay.
And if I can go a little, can I talk about this other system?
You bet.
This we compared this day 1 system that's where we let the lambs have colostrum for a couple days with the ewe. Then we put that lamb on milk replacer, and then we start milking the ewe. A day and a half after she gives birth to her lamb. The other system that we compared with those two systems, what we call the mixed system. And for the first 30 days, the lambs are with the ewes for half the day. And we separate the lambs from the ewes at night before the guys went home from the barn at 5 o'clock at night. They separated the ewes and lambs. The ewes were milked then once per day in the morning, and then after that they were put back with their lambs for the rest of the day. And so the ewes raised their lambs until 30 days of age, and then we put them on to dry diets. The ewes were milked once a day in the morning during that 30 days, and then after that they were milked twice a day. Well, we got some interesting results. When you look at the amount of milk that we got out of those ewes, the day 1 ewes, we got 260 kilos. The day 30 ewes, a lot less. Of course, we didn't get any milk the first 30 days. The mixed ewes, not that much less. These ewes raised their lambs, and we got about 55 pounds less milk out of them. And that was actually the most economical system because we didn't have any milk replacer and still got a lot of milk. But the problem was that we got significantly less fat. During those first 30 days, when we were milking these ewes once a day, they produced 2.8% fat in their milk compared with about 5% for the day one ewes. And over the entire lactation period, then we still had less percent fat in the milk. The cheesemakers don't like this milk at all. And what was happening, and we did several other studies afterwards, more detailed studies to pin this down, these ewes were giving you the milk that was in their cistern during the milking period, but they weren't letting down their alveolar milk, the milk up in the milk alveoli, and that's where all the fat is. And the fat needs to have active milk let down from oxytocin release. These ewes were waiting until they got back with their lambs to let down their milk with all that rich fat for their lambs. So we don't have anybody using this system, even though on a per pound of milk produced it was the most economical because the milk was too low in fat.
Okay, and what breed were these? Were these?
These were East Frisian crosses.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. And somebody asked a question earlier about the weights of these lambs when you weaned them at 30 days. How big were they?
They're right at 28 to 32 pounds.
Okay. All right. So we got a lot of genetic questions, and I should probably get on to some of those. Somebody asked a question about miniature sheep. For example, with goats, they say that a miniature goat produces 30% less milk but requires only half the feed and space. Any work been done on basically size?
No. There's no, we don't have like, they have the Nigerian dwarf goats and things like that. We don't have any miniature dairy sheep. These ewes are really quite large. They'll weigh, our mature ewes will weigh 180, 170, 185 pounds.
Oh, okay.
So they're big ewes that can eat a lot of feed.
Somebody asked about the British sheep milk you mentioned from Canada. Is it currently possible to bring those into the U.S.?
It's not. You could bring semen in from those animals, but the border is closed to breeding sheep to come across the Canadian border due to BSE in Canada, and the cattlemen have got the border closed.
Okay. Somebody said, what about Awassi sheep? Are they being introduced? Yeah, go ahead.
I should have mentioned that. There have been some, and I should update my slides. There have been importations, two importations of Awassi sheep into the U.S. This is the Mideast dairy sheep. The most famous is the improved Awassi from Israel. And they're reported in Israel to produce large quantities of milk, but we just haven't seen any real comparative data of the Awassi breeding that's in the U.S. Now. But that is another dairy breed that's currently here in small numbers, and I should have mentioned them.
Okay, good. Glad they asked the question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, you mentioned the import issue with Canada. Somebody just said, do you think the ability to import sheep will actually change this year based on proposed changes to the import regulations?
Yes. We're very hopeful. The Dairy Sheep Association of North America, and maybe the person that asked that question is familiar with their initiative, but they have actually been working with France to import a large quantity of Lacone semen this year due to the change in the import regulations. So as far as I know, that importation is still moving ahead, and plans are for some new Lacone semen to be coming into the U.S., which will be tremendous, because the Lacone gene pool that we have in this country is based upon 6 Lacone rams, so it's very, very limited, and we drastically need some more Lacone genetics.
Okay. Somebody asks, is there anyone milking Icelandic ewes in the U.S.?
There are. I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think True North Farm in New York was milking some Icelandics early on. I don't know if they still are, but I know that there were some producers milking Icelandic sheep. Again, I don't have any comparative data alongside Lacone or an East Frisian cross. My guess is, since they haven't been selected for milk production, that their milk production would be considerably less, even on a per pound of feed consumed basis, but that's just an educated guess.
Okay. And back when you were had the import slide for sheep cheese, and you had that big
Yes.
drop in 2008,
Yes.
a person noticed that the dollar curve actually remained pretty high, and they ended up crossing at some point.
I think that's a good observation.
I said, please explain what is happening here.
I think that's inflation. You know, that
Okay.
is the price per pound. Even though we were importing less, the price per pound went up enough to compensate for the decreased amount coming in.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
what I suspected there.
Yeah.
In terms of genetic selection, why hasn't there been more genetic selection for long lactations? It seems like 180 to 200 days is short.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think that individual producers that are doing milk recording are selecting inadvertently, if not directly, for increased lactation length, because they're interested in getting more milk, and the ewe that milks longer is going to generally produce more milk. But I think until we get a national genetic evaluation program in place where we can actually identify these bloodlines that do lactate longer across the country, we aren't going to make much progress. But inadvertently, we are making some progress in that just by selecting on lactation milk yield, because those that lactate the longest are generally those that produce the most milk.
Okay. Just one more question on the lambs, newborn lambs. Is bottle feeding colostrum preferable to leaving lambs on the ewes for 24 hours? Any difference there?
I think yes. Anybody that's raised lambs artificially know that it's very difficult, or not very, but it's more difficult to get a lamb onto a nipple once it's had the teat. And for the last 3 years at the Spooner Ag Research Station, the way that we have managed that is we take the lambs immediately from the ewes. We don't even let the lambs suckle. Those ewes that have just lambed go to the parlor, the end of the milking string. Their colostrum is collected, it's pooled, it's evaluated for quality with a colostrometer, which really just measures specific gravity, and then we tube every one of those lambs with a known quantity of colostrum that first day. And then we put them onto the milk replacer nipples. And it's done two things. The lambs go on to the milk replacer nipples much faster after never having suckled on a ewe, and our mortality has been cut to almost zero because we get a known quantity of high-quality colostrum in every single lamb. So that's been a system that we used for the last 3 years at the Spooner Station with real good success, and that actually came from several of the very large commercial goat dairies in Europe. This is a system that they use, and we adopted it from them.
Okay, thanks. And couple of nutrition questions. One of them says, how does sheep dairy nutrition compare to cow dairy, the cow dairy industry, grass-fed versus TMR? Anything on the nutrition side?
Yeah. Our nutrition program was very, very simple, and in some of these later slides, you'll see some of our nutrition work. We never went to a TMR ration, but I think that feeding a high-quality TMR to a dairy sheep, a dairy ewe, would result in increased production. Our system of production was very simple, our nutrition program. Before the pasture season, they were fed virtually free choice alfalfa haylage, and they got 1 pound of whole shelled corn in the parlor at each milking. So 2 pounds of whole shelled corn and free choice alfalfa haylage. When the pasture season started, they were on pasture all day. These were clover grass pastures that were irrigated if needed, very high quality, about 22% crude protein, and again, free choice pasture, and 2 pounds of whole shell corn per day. We actually initially fed a 16% soybean corn diet in the parlor, but that's too high a protein for these dairy ewes. When they're getting high quality alfalfa haylage or a high quality legume grass pasture, the total protein content of the diet of a high producing dairy ewe should be at about 16%. So if you're feeding a 16% supplement in the parlor and they're getting a 22% protein forage, the milk urea nitrogen levels were very, very high, indicating very poor use of the protein. So that's why we dropped back just a whole shell corn and high quality, high protein roughage. If your roughage is of low quality, then you need to be feeding a high protein supplement in the parlor. But if you've got high quality, high protein roughage, whole shell corn is all they need.
Okay. Let's see. We have some questions on online stuff. In terms of cost of production, is there a sheep dairy budget available online someplace that you can recommend?
There is. If you go to the sheep, if you go to the Department of Animal Sciences at UW-Madison website, and then click on Extension, and then click on sheep, there should be a spreadsheet there. I'll have to check with our webmaster to see if it's still there, but we do have, and if it's not there, I'll make sure that it gets there. So University of Wisconsin-Madison, Department of Animal Sciences, Extension, sheep. And we've got a bunch of dairy sheep resources there, and there should be an Excel spreadsheet there for dairy sheep production.
Okay. Other online resources besides Wisconsin-Madison, are there other good places to go that you can recommend in terms of finding information?
Yes. The Cornell University, at their website, they have a dairy sheep section. So again, go to Department of Animal Sciences, Cornell University, and sheep, and they have several things there. All of these proceedings from the Dairy Sheep Association of North America, past proceedings, are on both the University of Wisconsin sheep website and the Cornell website, for example.
Okay, and I can't answer the question on the budget. It is there. I just looked it up. So
oh, you did?
Yeah, there is a dairy sheep budget and Excel version. It's dated December of 2012, but I assume it's a template that people can put current numbers in.
Good. I'm glad you checked that out.
Yeah, so that is there. So we're pretty much out of time, and I mean, great questions coming in. I didn't get to them all. I apologize for the ones I missed. I tried to lump them together when people, especially asking about genetics and whatnot, and obviously there's a lot to learn here and a lot to digest. Yeah. And I really appreciate your time this evening and a great presentation, Dave. This was fantastic information, and I know it's going to help people out a lot that are either in this sheep dairy business already or interested in it. So thank you very much. This is a fantastic service.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and I would say that even though I'm retired, if people have questions, they can send me an email at dlthomas@wisc.edu. I may not be real fast in answering them these days because I don't check my work email all the time, but I try to get back to people as soon as I could.
Okay, fantastic, and thank you for doing that. And these slides will be posted, so I know Dave had some research data in there that, in case we had questions, as you guys saw, he referred to some of those, so those will be up there for you to digest, and you'll get a follow-up email in the next, probably by tomorrow evening if everything goes well, but definitely within the next 48 hours with links to the slides and to the recording for those that are interested in it. We'll have another Let's Grow webinar coming up the last week in April, and we'll talk about the meat quality side of things. And so we'll have Travis Hoffman from North Dakota State and University of Minnesota up there to talk about that. So we're looking forward to that. But for this evening, I thank Dave for your great presentation, and thank you to the audience for your attendance and fantastic questions. And everybody have a great evening.